So this morning, I'm absolutely delighted for episode number 300 to welcome Jon Clarke and Eddie Jones. So welcome to the podcast, guys.
Cheers, Rob.
Thank you for coming on. It's been a big build up to number 30. I must admit, a little bit nervous about what's coming. The ginger comment to kick us off probably stands in good stead for potentially what's going to come. But over the last 299 episodes, I've started off with asking the guests a little bit of background themselves. So maybe Eddie doesn't need too much of an introduction, but I think it'd be great to still get your backgrounds, what you've done previously and what you're currently doing. So I'm going to come to you first, Jon. Do you want to kick us off? So what you've done before you were at England, playing wise, coaching wise, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, I'll try and skip through 40 years as quick as I can, Rob. My sporting career started really early, actually. I raced BMXs back in the day. I was born with a very bent leg, and I was in rehab. I had plaster from hip to ankle, and when I come out, the surgeon actually said buy me a bike. So I started riding these BMXs, and then started racing, and then after a year or so, really got into it, and ended up winning a few things with that, and just really focusing. And that was my first sort of input to training, but also into competition, really. And it's funny how things pan out. Looking back at that, we used to do these training sessions where we'd just stand on the starting gate but not move and just push as hard as you could into the pedal, which is like just an isometric grind, basically. If you look at Alex and Terry's stuff, and then the gate used to go and we used to fly off, and then my dad used to maybe ride around in the week with a big high gear. So I was doing strength training in the week, and then we'd come to the meetings at the weekend, you'd drop the gears off and you'd fly. So my intro to training and competition was very early. I retired at 10, started playing rugby, signed for Wigan at 14. Started on their old apprenticeship scheme when I was 16. Did like a college and training sort of combination. Played for 4 years at Wigan, captain Great Britain Academy. Got in a bit of trouble when I was at Wigan, which ended my Wigan career. Ended up going to London Broncos for 18 months, and then come back to Warrington. Played for 10 years at Warrington. Had a testimonial year, a couple of Challenge Cups. Managed to play for Great Britain in that time as well. That coincided with doing a university degree about 2007. Did my sports science degree. Then went to Widnes, finished off there at Widnes for 3 years. Went and captained them on the return to Super League. Did my master's degree as well there. And then went into S&C from Widnes. I was very lucky. I had Dennis Betts, the old Wigan legend. He'd been one of a player who I'd bumped into when I first started at Wigan. They ended up being my coach at Widnes, and he was keen for me to do the S&C there when I finished playing. So I got a bit of a lucky break, really. I went from playing straight into head S&C at Widnes. Did that for a year, and then Warrington actually asked me to go back there straight away. I was meant to stay at Widnes, but I had the offer to go back to Warrington. Went to Warrington, did a couple of years under Tony Smith, and then Steve Price come in. He made me head of performance there. Did 12 months, just about to re-sign there, and then I got the opportunity to go to England. A friend of Eddie and mine, Andy Clarke, sort of knew me, obviously knew Eddie, and sort of tipped us into the job. And then obviously got the job 2018. And 2019 was the World Cup year, so an amazing time to start. Got the autumn internationals in, got Six Nations in, and then obviously got the World Cup in, which was one of the best experiences in my life. And that sort of brings us to the present day, really.
Cool. Over to you, Eddie.
No BMX stories. I loved cricket. Played rugby league up until I was 15. I grew up in a big rugby league area, South Sydney. Then went to a school where rugby was the main sport, so I started playing rugby. Played both until I was about 22. Managed to play about 8 first grade games in cricket, but I wasn't that flash. And then played rugby until I was 30, played good enough to play for New South Wales, not good enough to play for Australia. And I was a PE teacher. I loved teaching, but the only reason I did PE because I thought it was the best way to train to play rugby. And you didn't have to mark anything. So I did PE teaching for about 10 years, then became the deputy principal by chance. I think I was the last man standing, and then became the acting principal for 18 months, which was a great experience. And then they brought in a new principal, and I went to the chairman. It was one of the best discussions. He was an old bloke. He played for the AFL, and he said, what do you want to do? He said, if you want to continue in education, you need to do a master's in education. And I said, well, I was thinking of coaching. He said, well, I'd go and do coaching if I was you. So I think he was telling me I was better at being a coach than I was a school administrator. So I went and coached, and then, I've been to Japan, England, coached around the world, been lucky enough to end up coaching England.
Nice. It's interesting. There's been quite a few guys that I've had on. One in particular comes to mind, a guy called Glen Stewart, who's head of performance at West Coast Eagles. And he's been there, and over a certain age, the guys who are in them kind of positions have all been PE teachers or come through the education system. How did that set you up? And what did that give you to then take into, more present day Australia, Japan, England?
Yeah, I think, teaching's exactly like coaching. You got a group, you got to find a general framework to operate, and then you got to find out who's going to make the class good for you. And same in, coaching a team, who's going to make your team good, give them special attention, who's going to be naughty, give them special attention, and the rest in the middle look after themselves to a large extent. So I think learnt, how to manage a group, and particularly when I started teaching, I was I think they call them supply teacher here. So you go in every day, and you'd always, the day you go in would be the time that teacher had all the rat bag classes. So I was an expert at coaching year 9 boys, 15, 16-year-olds, where they don't want to learn. So I'd have the same class 4 or 5 times a day, and it just taught me how to manage a group and how to try to get something out of them. And I think a lot of my contemporaries in rugby coaching, like Graham Henry and Jake White, were all school teachers as well.
Do you think, and this is maybe coming back to you in a second, John, do you think the current generation of coaches, and just the main audience for this podcast is like strength and conditioning coaches like John, do you think that's potentially something missing from these maybe younger generation who've come through that traditional, or what we term traditional now, the university system of degree, masters? They don't actually have the grasp of controlling the group like maybe you guys did coming through that teaching.
Yeah, I think, and it's how life has become. Everyone's become a specialist. And reality was, like, when we came through, everyone was a generalist. And then you moved into you specialised in various areas. But, increasingly as we go along, like, I saw this woman the other day, she had a foot operation on the foot. And I said, did you go to the right foot specialist or left foot specialist? Because that's how it's become, isn't it? People are absolute specialists in certain areas, and I think the most important thing for young coaches is to get as much experience as they can, and whilst you'll have specialist knowledge, your job is to get as much experience as you can.
Just coming to you, John, from your transition from playing to coaching, was that something that you found relatively easily?
I think what Eddie says is bang on. And I would class myself, I think, as a generalist. I think I've definitely not gone down apart, obviously S&C, but there's quite a general route in that. I think the more you start off, don't you, with this wide vision of what you need and where you're going, and then it does narrow down a little bit. But yeah, I had some, going back to what Eddie said, I had some unbelievable coaches who over the years showed me exactly what Eddie's talking about, that how to handle a group, how to communicate with different people. My main mentor is Paul Stridgen, known as Bobby. He's the Wales head of performance. He coming to Warrington to be my conditioner, and that was where my real interest in S&C, because I was watching this guy with great S&C knowledge but his biggest strength was to how to control the group. He was unbelievable the way he managed all different types of players, needs, thoughts, feelings, and that's what good coaches do. And the good, the teaching bit. From this lockdown, I've had 3 kids. We've had 3 kids here, and I think the teaching just teaches you so much how to adapt on the run, how to control 3 different age groups, give them what they need, stop them what they shouldn't be doing. So I think that the link between the teaching and coaching is huge, Rob.
Mm-hmm. Just coming back to you, Eddie. Given the audience, S&C coaches, sports scientists,
Okay.
and we'll see if Jon agrees with this, given his current position. But what makes a good S&C coach from your experience and probably having multiple across the years? What characteristics, what qualities does a good strength and conditioning coach possess?
I think they got to have knowledge. All of our jobs, you got to have knowledge, but you also got to have a curious mind. You got to want to learn, but you also got to want to do. Like, there's a lot of coaches out there that learn a lot now, but you got to be able to do. And the doing is applying the knowledge to your group of players. And so that curiosity is just so important. You've got to have, as JC said, you've got to have management skills. You've got to understand people. And you've got to be a team player. You've got to be a team player. More and more, I see sports. We use a loose tactical periodization model where everything's based around the game. And therefore, in reality, our strength and conditioning coaches are assistant coaches. And more, I think that's going to be the case, that the games are getting so intense. You just look at football at the moment, how much more intense it is, so how much pressing there is. That the quality of your training has got to be so you're holistically preparing the player. So the emotional, the physical, the tactical, the social, the physiological, all of that together. And so S&C coaches have got to be an all-rounded coach. And they've got to be good with the bad kids, mate. Like, that's their test. Because the good guys always do well. It's how you get that bottom 5-10%, how you get more out of them. Like, that's the real key. When
a new coach comes into your, or potential new coach is making their way into your setup, what are the key things that you look for in terms of their personality and characteristics that either get a thumbs up or a thumbs down?
Yeah, probably the best example is the interview I had with JC. I can remember we had it out the back of the Lensbury. It was a nice sunny day, and I think it lasted maybe 4 minutes 32 seconds precisely. And the first reason I interviewed him, because he had a practical. He'd been coaching, but he'd also gone and done study, which shows that he's got an interest in knowledge. Then sat down with him, and he seemed like a good bloke. I was wrong there, but you get some things wrong. And I felt he was a good bloke, and I knew he knew his stuff. So I think it was the shortest interview I ever had. I knew he was the right bloke. And JC probably went straight back to Warrington thinking, shit, that was a waste of time.
So you mentioned loose periodization model. What does that mean to you in practical terms? Because there's people band it around. We use a tactical periodization model, but that means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. What does that mean to you and your beliefs?
Well, I think, there's a couple of parts to it. The first thing is just from a coaching point of view, having a real understanding of how you want to play the game. This is the game. And then all your coaching staff to understand that's the game. And then secondly, how you break that game down to put it in the most cohesive week. And knowing that if you get that week cohesive enough, then you don't need to make great changes to that week from week. Like, the reason I went down the track was that I always saw coaches say at the end of the week, team would get pumped, and they'd say, oh, we had a great preparation. Well, you didn't have a great preparation. But now I know with tactical periodization that we don't have it down set in stone, but we've got a pretty good idea of what we need to do. And if we get that preparation right, the team will play well. Now, it doesn't mean they always win, because sometimes the opposition are better, but you give them the physical, you give them the psychological, and you give them the tactical preparation to go into the game and play with a degree of cohesion, a degree of clarity, and that's what you've got to do. And football, again, you watch football and the European sides, particularly, that play 60 games a year, how they can play with such consistency reflects, I think, that the value of tactical periodization.
Just coming back to you, Jon. Eddie mentioned about the S&C coach being an assistant coach. How's that been for you in terms of that transition? Has there been much of a transition, a change of mentality of what is expected in the England setup versus where you've been previous?
I think that's probably been my development as an S&C coach since joining England, even more so because I had the rugby background. I've always, had that blend of coaching and S&C, if you want to split it up like that. So I have done always done the wrestle type, with exercises within the rugby league. But the model that we use, as Eddie rightly says, you're almost an assistant coach, because when you're designing your S&C programs, you're not designing them to run quick with no ball or to move well. You're designing them to get the lads to move better on the pitch in the game. And that sounds pretty obvious, but as S&C coaches, it doesn't happen a lot. We're chasing flying tens, and we're chasing acceleration times, and we're chasing change of direction ability and strength scores and power scores. We want this. And don't get me wrong, they're all they are important, but it's working out how does that feed into the bigger picture, and the only picture really, and that is how does the team play, and how can we feed into making that team play better. What as an S&C coach, that is the one thing I feel has helped me develop massively over the last 18 months. Yes, you've got to learn, but it's that application of your knowledge and how that feeds into the program. And I just mentioned that interview. Then I'll tell you a story. The interview finished after, say, whatever it was, and I was in reception at Lensbury, and I actually rang my missus, and it was 7:10, and she knew I was on at 7 o'clock. She went, "Shit, what's happened?" I said, "Well, I've either got it or it's the worst interview I've ever done." She said, "All right, let's see." And luckily it was. Luckily we got it, but no, it's no. So yeah, S&C coaching, I think, and that is right. This is where I think S&C coach is going. You're becoming an assistant to whatever your sport is, and you're working out not just what the best gym scores is. You're working out exercises, the way you do stuff, to how to feed into that game model that you've got better.
So how important is it then for someone, using England as an obvious example, for someone coming in with a non-rugby background, how important is that for them to obviously quickly get up to speed with demands of the game so they can do all the things that you've both said?
Well, huge, because you've got to understand the game, haven't you? And that doesn't mean you need to be an ex-rugby player or but you've got to understand what the demands of the game are, and what you're preparing these players to do, tactically, technically, physically, psychologically. What do they have to go through? And the crux of rugby is, whether it's rugby league or rugby union, it's the toughest game in the world, and that makes preparation of players exciting, but in some ways very difficult as well. And then you add them challenging players in there as well, and that's a litmus test for an S&C coach, for a rugby coach, is how you get them challenging players to perform in the gym and prep right, and then they go out on the field and perform right as well.
Just coming back to you, Eddie, with this tactical periodization, the emphasis on the sport rather than the silo of I'm a strength and conditioning coach, just touching on that, probably a similar question to Jon, does that mean that people in rugby kind of stay in rugby and people in football stay in football, because that knowledge of one game is maybe difficult to transfer to another given the needs for the technical knowledge?
I think in S&C it's more transferable. I think if you've got a good feel of the game, and what I mean a good feel of the game, you can see what you need, what equipment you need to play the game well. I think S&C coaches, and I think the history shows they're able to move across sports. For coaches, I think it's impossible, mate. You're kidding yourself. Because I watch a game of football and I think I might know something, but I know bugger all. Because unless you've played the game, you haven't got a feel for the game. Even I watch rugby league. I'm watching every NRL game. I'm watching every NRL show at the moment. I don't really know. Like, I've got a few views, but unless you've really been in the game, you can't coach it.
Mm-hmm.
Because if it was that easy, everyone would do it, wouldn't they?
Gosh.
And they don't. And they don't.
So just on keep going on the tactical periodization stuff, and Jon's changing mindset to always bringing it back to being specific to the game. What are your expectations of him, and what drills look like, and how involved do you get in what they do, and ask the question, how is this actually we're spending half an hour on this, how does it actually transfer to what we're going to get on a Saturday?
They probably wish I wasn't involved as I am. No, I like to know, mate. I'm 60. It's still the fun part of the week, the training, and you got to get that right. Like, training's where you make a difference to your team, and so the quality of your training is just so important. You get it right, and it's from again tactical, psychological, physical point of view. They've all got to work together to create the right game or drill at training, create the right training session. Because, one of the most interesting things I've always found coaching is that on a Monday night, you can almost predict how your team's going to do on Saturday. Because Monday generally, if you played Saturday or you played Sunday, Monday's your recovery day where you're doing a little bit, to get them back into it. And if they finish that day feeling good about themselves, you got the soreness out of them, they're excited about the week ahead, then you got a really good chance of having good preparation. So that the way you put together that Monday's so important. And then the other big thing that I think's changed in preparation, and I think it's probably for most sports that are physically taxing, that you can only ever have one hot session a week where you really go hard, that you can't expect players to get up for two sessions. And that's, I think, one thing we've done reasonably well with England. Our whole week builds up to Wednesday, and the players know on the Wednesday. We can train quite hard on a Wednesday, even for a test week. But they'll come off the field, even though they're tired, you'll hear them laugh, they'll have some fun, and they've enjoyed the hardness of the session, but the session's also appropriate to them getting prepared for the game. No, it doesn't always happen like that, but that's how you want it to be.
If you don't see what you want to see on the Monday evening, does that change your plan? How do you manipulate things? Or do you manipulate things?
You might have to give them a bit more of a spark on the Tuesday. You might have to take a bit of volume out, or you might have to put a bit of volume in. You might have to do a few fun activities if the ambience of the group wasn't right. So, and all the coaching books say, always reflect, evaluate, and you've got to consistently do that. So have a plan, have a really good, concise plan for the week, but continually reflect and evaluate and adapt the plan to what the players need. Because ultimately, it's always what the players need. All the guys listening to this, we're all servants to the players. Our job's to get the players right. And we can think what's right, but what's really right is what's right for them. But you got to also understand sometimes the players don't know what's right for them. And that's why we have coaches. So that's a bit of a contradiction.
Yeah. Just coming back to you, Jon, on that, and we were talking about this. I did a podcast a few days ago with two current players and one ex-player, and we were talking about the exact same thing, that it is involving the players. Do you think sometimes we lose that because we think we know best as coaches, that this is what the guys need, rather than actually involving them in the process?
it's a delicate balance sometimes, isn't it? I think of allowing players some input, because they've got some great ideas, and a lot of players, you're dealing a lot of the times with real seasoned professionals who've been around. They've done loads of pre-seasons, they know how to recover, they know how to train. So, to not listen to them and to not give them a voice can sometimes be disastrous. So, and I think that's the skill of coaching. It is working out, one of the skills of coaching is working out which players, you give a little bit more to, and which players you give a little bit more instruction to. Do you listen a little bit more here and maybe just guide a little bit more there? So, but I do think that the new generation of player as well, they want to, they want to be heard a little bit more as well. So, and they want to have a little bit more input, and that's one thing we try and do. We try and drive them to I think Tony Holler calls it, look after your own house, doesn't he? The American speed coach, he's and ultimately as a coach, I think that's what you want to do, isn't it? You're trying to equip players, whether it's rugby or S&C, to try and look after their own house as much as they can. So a delicate balance, I think, Rob.
On a very practical level, how do you actually give them the voice? Give the right people the voice at the right time? I know I've been in environments where you've had like various leadership groups led by a certain, maybe the older players, the more experienced players, and they're involved in the decision making for whether it be the preparation or whatever. Is that something you guys do? I'm just thinking, how can people listen to this and hear how you do it on a day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month basis?
Yeah, there's loads of ways, Rob. There's loads of ways, from warm-ups, Dan Fichter, he calls it free time, doesn't he? He has 15 minutes of free time. And we do something similar where there's a period of time where the players are, challenged to get themselves ready to either start a bit more of an intensive warm-up or go into a session. So, rather than being so having such a dictatorship where that's that part of the warm-up, that's that part, you can guide players and mold players over time to actually take a little bit more consideration over how their individual prep. So that's certainly one way. In the gym, create choice around, exercise selectors to some degree. Lower body, we don't move too much, but there's certain areas of the gym where you can create choice around exercises and allow them to pick, really, because and the psychology of that is, if they're picking and they want to do it, there's a good chance they're going to go harder at doing it than if you're saying now we're doing this. So there's loads of different ways that you can basically create choice of players within a framework that works.
What's your thoughts on that, Eddie? Any past experiences that have done particularly well or not particularly well?
Yeah, well, I think you can either do it formally or informally. You can have a leadership group, but you've got to make sure that leadership group's reflective of the team. And you can use that as a formal way of getting feedback and involving the players in the planning. But I think there's one thing that's really important, that whenever you're consulting the players, you got to get the players to understand, like, some of these things are non-negotiable. So there's a certain level of training we have to prepare to the game, because why does Roger Federer at 40 still have a tennis coach when he's the best player, probably one of the best players we've ever seen, best athlete we've seen in maybe? Because the coach makes him do things he doesn't want to do. And so you got to set your stall. These things are non-negotiable. We're not talking about that. So I always say to our leadership, we're not going to talk about how hard we're training, but we can talk about when we're training. We can talk about the content of the training. I'm happy for you to give feedback on that. And you just got to give them a voice. And again, you can do that formally, or you can do it informally. Walk the floor in the gym, walk through, talk to the players, get feedback from the players. Is this right for you? If not, what do you think you should be doing? And you can constantly be doing that, so that if you've got 35 players in your squad, that in that week you've had a one-on-one meeting with that player, and it might be only 2 minutes, but the players will remember that meeting, that you've asked for their feedback, and that'll make them feel better. and they'll also understand that you care about them.
So apart from the intensity of training, is there any other non-negotiables for you?
That they give 100%, mate.
Yep.
They give 100%. Doesn't matter how they are. They front up, give 100%. So as long as they're doing that, we're happy. As long as we win on the weekend, we're happy.
Just going back to you, John. You mentioned I don't know what phrase you used, but not pushing too much weight on lower body stuff. Talk to us about that.
Not deviating a little bit from sort of, we I think pre-World Cup we had a real good look at sort of squats and trap bar deadlift, and again, what was the transfer? That was what we were saying, and I know you can't sort of analyze it directly, but that was one of the main things that we were searching for. We were lucky, went over and spent some time with Chris Corfis pre-World Cup, and we did some RPR stuff on that, and then started looking at bits and bobs with him, and Cal Dietz obviously been a big influence to us, and that positioning of a lower body exercise where it's hand supported split squat Bulgarian, but just positioning that to load positions more specifically to what the game is, so squatting and trap bar and you potential scrum, but you question how much transfer that has got to when you go out on the field. So we just started looking at exercises that's going to give us more transfer, and you still get the load. Boys are still strong, but you develop a strength and a power in a much more specific position, body angle, if you want to call it that. So that's what I mean. That said, some boys still want to, I need to squat, which is fine. And again, that's that skill, isn't it, of what you're listening, or are you instructing, or you're going, well, that's fine for you. So there's a little bit of leeway there, mate, but not too much.
I know you've obviously got an incredible knowledge of the game, but how much is that influenced by the beliefs of the technical staff? If them beliefs change, would that potentially change how you go about things in the way you've just mentioned?
Yeah, potentially. But if you look at rugby, and if you look at acceleration, going into contact, going out of contact, positions are, you can replicate them pretty well in the gym. So, and that's what I mean by specificity of exercises. You can replicate them. All the other little bits of technical stuff, it's not. That wouldn't impact it too much, but it's the big bang for your buck exercises, because the other bit is, you're up against time, aren't you? As an S&C, you don't get much time with the model that we use. We use strict time frames that we give. So it's about understanding and working out the biggest bang for buck exercises, programs that are going to give you everything you need in a short time frame. To feed back into that game model that we need best.
Just going back to you, Eddie, John mentioned about some of the influences that he's had from guys in the States and whatnot. I know you're pretty public in looking at different environments for influence and for knowledge and experience. Is there any area in particular that you are currently focusing on in looking at different environments, then bring the knowledge and experience from them different environments across to England?
We've been looking a bit at how we debrief training at the moment. We just did a 5-week program with Nikki Lofthouse, who's something in RAF. Do you know what she does there, JC? I hope she's not listening to this.
I know she works at the
No, it was all about leadership. She was fantastic. And it's just about the fact of, at the end of training, can we reinforce the learning of the training better than having a meeting later down the track? So we've been playing around with that a little bit. And again, you can learn from a number of different areas. I've been having a lot of meetings with English men's hockey coach about their design of training, whether we can learn a bit more about the design of training. Because, as I said before, I think the real issue of coaches is how do you get training as specific and make it as adaptive for the players as you can. So when they go on the field, they're equipped to play the game. Doesn't matter whether it's played at 100 metres per second or it's played at 80 metres per second. The ball is played for 50 minutes or for 30 minutes. They're equipped to play that game.
In the experiences you've had outside rugby, how hard has it been to integrate, like you mentioned, the RAF or other environments into yours? And what's the process you go through to ensure that happens as smoothly and clearly as possible?
We're just always looking for people that are smarter than you. So in my case, it's not real hard, mate. So you're just always looking for people who've got good ideas. Every idea is good. But then you've got to work out, right, is that going to give us, as the term that JC used, a bang for our buck? Is that really going to make us win? Or is it just something nice? And sometimes you need some gimmicks in your program. Gimmicks every now and then are good because they're fun. But as long as you think that's not going to be the thing that's going to make you be perceptively better. The things that make you perceptively better are hard work, discipline, specificity, overload. They're the constants that you've got to make sure you got that in your program. If you can find some way of making that difference but the same, then it's great motivationally for the players. And then you've got your little bit of add-ons that you can always put in your program.
So just dive into the debrief stuff. Was that something that you identified because you thought you could get more out of that area? Or was it something that kind of found you?
Yeah, no, we looked at that purposely to see if we could reinforce learning better because our game is continually getting more decision making in it, and the players are going to have to make more decisions by themselves. So we wanted to create situations where we can reinforce that learning they've had at training.
Just going back to you, John, you mentioned Cal and Chris Crawford. Is there anyone else out there that you've tapped into? And have them influences or influencers changed given the current structure at England?
I think, as Eddie said, you're always looking at you, particularly as an S&C, and the luxury of the S&C now is there's so much information out there, isn't there? But I think the skill now actually is to have a fantastic siphon, isn't it? I heard the phrase the other day, massive exclusion. It's about working out what you need, not sort of getting everything. It's certainly working out. So I think we've got the luxury that we work with an international side, so we can go to the best people in particular areas and talk to them about that. So I think that would be my advice: work out what the demands of your game is, and then look at the top people in their areas. Eddie said the people who are cleverer than you in that particular area, and go and speak to them. I think that's one thing the lockdown's done, isn't it? It's highlighted how accessible a lot of people are. You can if you've got the nous to get on the email or get on the phone, or social media has brought everyone closer together. You can really find out some great information with not too much difficulty. So in answer to your question, mate, we look everywhere. We look everywhere for little bits that you can feed into your program that are going to make it better. But I say the skill of that is because the volume of information is so large, is actually to siphon it down into those little bits that you need.
When I spoke to Aaron Coots, it was developing the bullshit filter. And I suppose that's
a nice way of putting it.
Yeah. I suppose that, like you say, that's more relevant than ever with how accessible people are, how accessible information is. But I suppose that's a big thing for people. How have you developed that, Eddie? The bullshit filter?
Well, I think bullshit's got a track record, and you always look at the track record. Who's involved with it, who's pushing it, what's the evidence? The great thing we've got is evidence. So there's plenty of opinions, but evidence. So if you look at the evidence, sort through it. Is there a justification to use that? And sometimes you might just experiment with it for a short period of time, find out yourself. Yeah, I think that's always an option. Don't be afraid to fail, depending on where you are in your competition phase, obviously. You know, if you've got a long pre-season, then you can afford to play around with a few things at the start of the pre-season and not quite get it right. But if you're on a tighter program like us, we've got less scope to experiment with things that are a little bit more risky, and keep debating it. You know, we had a great meeting yesterday where the coaches were really strongly debating certain issues, and if you haven't got that in your program, then that's the first thing you got to get. Don't worry about all the other bullshit. Get robust conversation in your coaching group, because then if someone brings an idea, then you want other people to be saying, but what about this? What about that? Have you thought about this? You know, whereas if they say, oh, that's a great idea, then you don't have a filter within your organisation. So it's important not only to have a personal filter, but an organisational filter.
Just going back to that tactical periodization discussion, when you were thinking about the benefits of tactical periodization, what was because I'm just guessing that people will be out there, coaches will be, just in my environment in football, will be seeing tactical periodization being bandied about and be thinking about changing their philosophy of how they go about things. What was that transition like for you, and where do you go for, I suppose, validation that what you were thinking was the right way?
Well, really didn't know, mate, to be honest. I went and saw a couple of people, and it had been used by a couple of very good coaches. And, you know, if you know good coaches are using it in their own way and they're being successful, then there's something to it. So that gave it some validity. Like, I went and met a guy in Qatar that had used it with Jose Mourinho. So, you know, he'd won a few cups. So it can't be too bad. And then you fit it to your program and see how it works. Now, the tactical periodization we use with Japan is considerably different from what we're using with England now. And even over the four years I've been with England, we've changed it considerably. So it's consistently evolving, consistently adapting, because again, what do your players need?
Can you give us any info on how that may have changed? Like, even maybe not up to the recent day, but from Japan to the transition to England?
Yeah, well, just with England, we used to do 2 tough sessions a week, Tuesday and Thursday, which Japan, we did the same. And we've morphed over the last 3 seasons, I think, to just the one hot session on a Wednesday. So that's a considerable change, because we felt that the players emotionally struggled to get up twice a week for tough sessions, and we were better off focusing on 1 tough session a week.
Cool. I know we haven't got tons of time, Eddie, and I'm going to I won't keep you for too much longer, but I'll come back to you in a sec. I'll go to Jon first. The next, not the next big thing, but the biggest thing that could potentially influence what you do and how you do it. Where do you think that's going to come from?
Good question, that, Rob.
Even what area, maybe not specific people or environments, but what specific area do you think there's a gap that you would potentially want to fill given an ideal situation?
I think the problem with S&C is everything's already been done, hasn't it? You know, it's been done for thousands of years. So I don't think it's anything specific. You know, I couldn't name something specific really, but I think from an S&C point of view, the biggest thing that we, and it's been mentioned quite a lot, the biggest thing that we are doing is how can we make our training more specific and more valid to what the game's given us. So whether that evolves into something huge and we come across a golden nugget, I don't know, but that takes up a lot of my sort of thinking and thought process. And all the things that feed into that, and there's loads of things I'm interested in. I love the breathing and the recovery and how the breathing can impact performance. That's a real interest, but it's always back to how do we get the team to play better. So I couldn't give you one area, Rob, if I'm honest, because I think, as I said, most of it's been done, and we're just, we're pulling bits from here, there, and everywhere around me, and we're developing it to make it better. But I think what Eddie said there is right from an S&C point of view as well. Is you should question everything and try as much as you can, because I listened to Alex Natera's podcast the other day. And that's pretty much how he stumbled across it, isn't he? He was doing things and he was just trying it and testing it and himself, and he's come across, what he would probably class as his golden nugget, in the ISO, and how he's put that together. So I think from an S&C point of view, is definitely try stuff, test things out for yourself, and you might come across this golden nugget that you're speaking about. When
you mention specificity, I think people have probably the image in the mind of, I don't know, a weighted golf club or a weighted rugby ball. That's definitely not what we're talking about, is it? It's just, I think it's just semantics, but I think people do have that negative connotation when it comes to specificity.
Yeah, they do, and that doesn't mean we don't do any general strength work or speed work again. But again, it goes back to how tight's your time frame, or how much time frame have you got, and that'll depend on what you can do. And the reality is that our time frames are usually quite tight. So everything we do has to be specific and has to feed into that. So it's probably only once every 4 years where we get that time frame where we can generalize a little bit more, and do those general type of S&C exercises, or protocols a little bit more. But it always comes back to feeding into that specific model and how you get your team to move better, to play the game better.
Mm-hmm. Just coming back to you, Eddie, for the final time.
Yeah.
Pretty a bad question that went to John a minute ago. But any specific areas that you're looking at? I know you mentioned the debriefs as a potential gap that could be improved. Anything else that you're looking at in terms of areas that you're looking to improve and maybe plug a gap?
I think that the thing we still coach badly in rugby is small space agility and our ability to go from a high position to a low position. And it's one of the most difficult things to coach, but I think teams will make improvements in that area because the game's demanding it more and more. We've got bigger guys, same space, so ability to move big guys to move quickly in small space, and make that, as JC said, make that specific to the game. I think that'll be an area that continually evolves over the next period of time. But I think just for coaches, how you can be a great reflector, how you can understand where you are as a coach, what you need to do to improve and how you're going to do that. And that takes a bit of professional courage. So, I think that's something we're all grappling with all the time. We had Roy Hodgson came and had dinner with us in the Six Nations. And his first statement, I think, was, JC, was he said, the more I coach, the more I understand I don't know. And it's true. We don't know, but you got to keep having a go and try to find out what's right. And then if it's not right, put it down, pick up a new set of clubs and see what you can find what is right.
Any of the words of wisdom you've picked up along the way from people like Roy that's kind of changed your opinion on certain things or just sparked a little bit of thought?
Well, the one I've picked up over the last period of time is just reinforcement. Great hockey coach in Australia, Rick Charlesworth, and he's written a book called The Coach. It's worth a read. It's a great read. And his statement was that things on the field haven't changed last 50 years. The standard you set has got to stay the same. Now, how you get there is a bit different because you can't just yell and scream and tell them to do it. You've got to guide them a bit more. But what's significantly changed for coaches is the way you behave off the field. You're much more now of a mentor, a guider, help the players discover, give them more of a say. And I think that's a really good way of summarising where a coach needs to be at the moment.
Cool. I'll come back to you, JC, in a minute, but I just want to ask Eddie, young coaches or even current coaches, experienced coaches, what would be and it may just be a combination of all the things you chatted about over the last 50 minutes, but what would be your biggest bit of advice for them currently? Strength and conditioning coaches, sports scientists, technical coaches, whatever it may be.
Right. So don't forget this, because this will be the most important thing you ever hear. And I know nothing. But it's just never think you're a good coach. Always think you're moving towards that elusive target of being a good coach, because you never get there. You never get there. But always strive to be a good coach and love your job. Whatever job you got, love, because if you're doing well in the job you're doing at the moment, you'll get the next job. You don't have to worry about the next job. And young coaches are always saying, what have I got to do to go up to the next level? Do your job well. Because people remember people who do their job well. Do your job well.
Cool. Over to you, Jon.
Yeah, very similar. I think in terms of doing your job well, one thing I always try and do is how do I need to prepare myself to do my job well? You know, because we are always about preparing players, aren't we? Or, you know, to play the game, to do S&C. But a lot of the time, you know, because you do long hours and you lose the focus of actually how you prepare yourself. And I think that's massive. You know, particularly if you're in very intense camps and stuff like that, it's easy just to get in that boom out, you know, play. And the players have got to be the number one focus, but for them to be the number one focus, yourself has got to be good as well. So it's about working out what you need on a daily, hourly basis to make sure that you're performing well. And then I think that ties into what Eddie said. You've got to love your job. Like I absolutely love what I do. I feel so privileged to be able to be involved with rugby, but all, you know, S&C. So yeah, it makes it much easier when you're loving what you do, Rob.
I know I said a promise to your last question, Eddie, but this is definitely going to be the last question. Just based on what Jon said, as the captain of the ship, moving things forward, how do you ensure that people like JC are given the empowerment to be able to look after themselves in such a stressful, time-consuming, all-consuming environment?
I have a cattle prod ready, mate. No. I think it's always gets down to communication. You know, consistently try to work out where the staff member is. What do they need now to get them to the next level? Because we're lucky, we and I'm sure your listeners are the same. They're coaches that want to achieve. So everyone wants to get better, but sometimes it might be you that's blocking your obstacle to get better, and sometimes you've got to find a way to free that obstacle up for them.
Cool. I'm definitely going to let you go now. But thank you both for coming on. Really appreciate it. And special thanks, JC, for lining it up. And I'll chat to you both soon. Thank you very much.
Good on you, mate. Thanks, JC.
Thanks, guys.